Okay, save me a seat. We're going to start on chapter 40, and we're going to do a few chapters because they're getting so short at the end. So yesterday we read 36 through 39. So Joe, Mrs. Beam explained the game, and they're playing a guessing game about who each paper belongs to, their item of reflection. And he's still so upset about not having his M&M. Okay. And they remember they walked around to look at everybody's stuff. And then Ravi explains how, he explains how his Paripa, with I think is his grandpa, took him over to the little lake in his apartment or development, whatever, and they got leeches out of it, and that's what he took. And then everybody is looking at them on his desk, and Joe can see over their heads, and his grandfather says, to remember who you are and be proud of it. And then that's when he puts the M&M in Joe's bowl when everyone is looking at the leeches, and then Joe can't believe his eyes, and he sees that it's not the same one because it wasn't like the regular old M&M. It was a double, and he knows, and it's blue, and he knows who had that one, so he knows who put it in the bowl. And then they started guessing, and that dang Dylan Samreen is being so snotty, like, oh, I knew who that is, and all these comments. Ooh, he would be sent to the office for sure, or talked to. Anyway, so he's being snotty. Okay, so here we are, chapter 4, Joe. Let me see here. It says, remember Dylan was on top of the desk. Please get down from your chair. And then Dylan gets down. And then when he sees the candy in Joe's bowl, he is shocked. Shock is all over his face. Okay. Do you know who the card belongs to? Mrs. Beam asks Lucy. Lucy nods but doesn't move. Is something the matter, Lucy? Asks Mrs. Beam. I don't want to see the leeches, she whispers. What's so scary about a couple of old worms, sneers Dylan. Ever since Mrs. Beam shut down his superstar routine, he's been acting kind of grumpy. Lucy gives him a dirty look. Hallelujah. Maybe this means the wedding is off. Ravi has his hand up. Yes, Ravi? Says Mrs. Beam. I noticed she says his name right for the first time with the accent on the second syllable. Could you please tell Lucy Mulligan that the lid on the jar is screwed on very tight? My grandfather and I made sure of that. The leeches will not escape. Nothing to worry about. See? He lifts the jar and turns it upside down. No water leaks out, but turning the jar over like that gets the leeches all freaked out, and they start wiggling around even more than before. I expect Lucy to start screaming again, but instead she walks over and tosses the card down on Dylan's desk without even looking at him. Then she turns and smiles at Ravi. I didn't know you knew my name, she says, tilting her head to one side. I look at Dylan to see what he's making of this disgusting mushy moment, but he isn't paying any attention to Lucy. He's got his eyes glued to the jar of leeches. I know that look. I've seen it 1,000,000 times before. What do you think he's wanting to do? That Dylan Samreen. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, 41. It's your turn to pick a card, says Mrs. Beam, holding the basket out to Dylan. He groans. This game is so lame. What's the point? You can't even win. Try to muster a bit more enthusiasm, will you please? Says Mrs. Beam. Not every game has to be about winning. If you ask me, Dylan is getting off easy. Mrs. Arun would have made him kneel down on the floor or sit facing the wall if he had talked back to her like that. Dylan makes a big show of swirling his hand in the basket to stir the cards up. His overacting is even worse than Shakti Kapoor's. That's a Bollywood star, I think. I can't believe I ever wanted to be his friend. Oh, hold on, let me see. Is that Shakti Kapoor? I'm pretty sure that's a Bollywood star. It would be like a Hollywood star. Yes. Oh, remember, he's best known for playing villains. Okay, I can't believe I ever wanted to be his friend. Abracadabra, he says, pulling out a card and waving it in the air like he's done something special. Nobody responds, not even Lucy Mulligan, who is busy staring at me for some reason. Dylan shakes his hair out of his eyes and read what is written on the card. Quitting is not an option. He rolls his eyes. Gee, I wonder who this could be. Then he marches straight over to Tim or Jim, I still don't know which it is, and puts the card down on the desk. Is it you? Dylan asks, in a voice that says he is confident his guess is correct. Nope, says Jim, shaking his head. It's not me. Dylan can't believe his ears. What do you mean, it's not you? He says, it has to be you. Everybody knows you're the kid who just won't quit. Jim just looks at him and shrugs. It's not me, he says. You see, Mrs. Beam's pistachio eyes are twinkling like little green stars. Maybe this game isn't so easy after all. Well, if he didn't write it, who did? Asks Dylan, looking around the room. I wink at him and smile. I did, I say. Joe. He cheated, shouts Dylan. That's why I couldn't guess it. What do leeches have to do with quitting? Would you like to come up to the front of the class and tell us how the two things are connected, Ravi? Personally, I would have been sweating bullets if Mrs. Beam made me, remember this is from Joe's point of view, made me stand in front of everybody like that, but Ravi doesn't seem nervous at all. In fact, he looks happy. He pushes up his glasses and clears his throat like he's about to give a speech or something. I'm listening, but I'm also keeping my eye on Dylan in case he tries to mess with Ravi's leeches while he's busy giving his speech. Quitting is not an option, Ravi says. This is what my father taught me and what his father taught him and what I will teach my own son someday too. Big deal, says Dylan. What does that have to do with leeches anyway? I told you he cheated. Shh, says Mrs. Beam. Go on, Ravi. Ravi pushes up his glasses again. I haven't prepared anything else to say, but I could tell you a story if you like. Dawn, dawn, dawn. Chapter 43. From Ravi's point of view. I rub my nose and push up my glasses. My hands are shaking a little, so I fold them together the way we were taught to do in elocution class at Vidya Mandir. That's kind of like giving speeches. For many generations, the Suryan Arayanan family has worked with tea, I began. When my grandfather was a young man, he worked in the tea plantations. His job was to protect the tea pluckers from wild animals that might be lurking nearby. I look around the room, everyone is listening. Some are even leaning forward in their seats. I decide to bring a bit more drama to the story by adding a few details Paripa had not included in his version. Have you ever been attacked by a porcupine or a wild boar? I ask, pawing the ground with my foot. Have you ever seen a panther crouching in the grass ready to pounce? Or been stuck in the middle of a war between two angry elephants? I pause and look around the room for dramatic effect. All those years of elocution lessons are really paying off. Imagine it is the monsoon season, I say. Imagine the ground is still damp from all the heavy rain. A perfect hiding place for the most dangerous creature of all. More dangerous than the porcupine or the panther. This animal can latch onto you and bite through even the toughest flesh with its 300 razor-sharp teeth. What the heck? says Jax. Be quiet, Caleb Burrell tells him. I want to hear about the teeth. This is no time to lose momentum, so I take a deep breath and I dive back into the story. Well, my grandfather battled these tiny Draculas in disguise every single day. Imagine yourself plucking tea under a hot sun, then suddenly you realize that you're surrounded by vicious black worms waiting to fix themselves to your body and drain your lifeblood out. Look, there's one between your toes. Be careful, there's one behind your ear. Believe me when I tell you, these dreaded blood-sucking leeches can even crawl up your nostril. Just as my tale is building to a climax, I am interrupted by a loud choking sound. A moment later, the air is filled with a horrible smell. "Check it out," shouts Dylan Samreen. "Emily Mooney just blew chunks." Don. No, a little bit more. Don, don, don. A little bit more though. Poor Emily got sick, I think. Okay. Okay, from Joe's point of view, 44. Apparently, all that stuff about giant blood-sucking leeches climbing up your nose got to Emily, and she barfed up her breakfast. Kids are running around screaming, Dylan is laughing, Emily is bawling, and Mrs. Beam is calling the office to tell them to send the custodian down to room 506, quick with a mop. I feel bad for Ravi. He was having such a good time up there telling his story, and now all anybody can think about is Emily's barf. Miss Frost was right. It must be really hard coming all the way from India to New Jersey, especially when you have to deal with somebody calling you names and stealing your mechanical pencils, not to mention hitting you on purpose with a softball. I look at that beautiful blue double peanut M&M sitting in the bowl in front of me and whoop, zoop, sloop. All of a sudden, I get this great idea. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, next time will be 45. We're almost done. Do you like the board? Isn't it pretty?